Welcome back. One last thing to talk about with Create React App is how it handles CSS and other assets like images that we might want to use inside of components. So when we create a new React app from scratch, we have our app.js component that's already written, and at the top we've discussed importing React, singling out the component, extending the component, that sort of thing. But we haven't talked about these two lines. So the first one is an example of importing an asset, importing an image, which is actually, well, that's a lie. It's not an image. It's an SVG that we include that we're importing from the source folder, and we're using it directly inside of the component. Another example is importing this CSS file. So we'll talk about both of them. Let's start by talking about CSS. So the standard sort of conventional way to do this is to make your CSS file the exact same name as your component, house.css for a house component, just like house.js is the component file for the house component. But then inside of that file, the JS file, you import that CSS. So Create React App takes care of stuff behind the scenes, and it allows you to load that CSS. In addition, it's conventional to add class name set to the name of the component on the sort of top level div or whatever element you're using, the top level element in your component. So for example, we have this div that's returned in the render of our house component. We give it class name of house. And then every other class name that we use inside of it, you don't have to do this, but this is what you'll see a lot, is house-title or house-address, house-callout or success or whatever the other various classes are, just to make it clear that these apply to the house component. And then we might have another component called car or apartment, and they might have different styles for apartment-title. So rather than just title and address, if we have two components and each one has a title and address, one is house, one is apartment, we might style them differently. This just makes it clearer what applies to what. So here's the same sort of basic brand new React app that I've been working with. I haven't changed a thing. I'm going to go into source. I'm going to make a new component. Let's do dog.js. This doesn't really matter. We need to import the basic stuff at the top, import React and component from React. Then we declare the class dog extends component. And then we need to just make sure at the very least we have our render. And for now, let's do a very simple render that returns a div, and inside of that div, put an h1 that says dog and just leave it at that. So then we need to make sure, of course, to export our dog at the bottom, and then inside of our app.js, we can work with it. So let's begin by just adding in a single dog. So I'm going to delete everything inside of this app, and I'm going to add a single dog component. And I don't want to do that. That was autocomplete. I want to do this. We don't have anything to pass in. There's no inner HTML or anything. Of course, this isn't going to work because I have not imported my dog. So we need to import dog from /dog. Okay, next, let's talk about adding CSS in. So let's just make sure it's working. Right now, I have it open. I am seeing dog from my dog component. Now, if we go into dog.js, let's create a CSS file. And again, the convention is dog.css. And let's start with just a simple .dog. And inside of .dog, we'll give everything, I don't know, a color of purple, just like that. So just to be clear, it's not doing anything at the moment. We have to import it. So I go to my dog.js and I'm going to import, and then I don't do a variable name or anything. We're just importing the file. So it's just ./dog, but we do need to do .css. And now we should have access to those styles, but once again, they're not being applied because we're doing the class of dog. So the convention is class name equals dog on the top level element, the parent inside of your dog component. And now everything's purple. Okay, but let's just say that I did something like this. Let's say div. So not a good example, not a great way of styling things in React, but let's say I select all divs and I'm going to make them background of, how about teal? Okay, so this is going to make all divs teal. So we can see we have this div from dog, but if I go to my app.js, let's add another div that says I am another div not in dog component. and save, you'll see it is also teal. So this shows us that we import this CSS, but it's not like whatever we write in here only applies to this file. We're just importing the CSS in general, and so we need to use specific classes, usually started with or prefixed with the name of a component, in order to apply those classes selectively. So if you write styles that are general and you're importing it anywhere, those styles will apply all over the place. So it's not contained to this file. Now there are ways of doing that, of scoping our CSS, but it requires some external tools, and we're not going to get into that right now. Okay, next let's talk about images. So with images, we import them with the same syntax, and it's typical to store them in the source folder, although if you have a ton of stuff that you're putting in there, you can just create sort of child directories, images folder, styles folder. You can sort of structure it however you want. You just need to make sure that you're referencing the correct path. Then you can load them, save it into a variable, and then use that variable inside of your code. So this is what we saw in the app component, which I just deleted inside of my actual application, but source equals logo. We're importing the logo from the source directory /logo.svg. So I've done the same thing over here. I have a image I've added in, this pug image. I've saved it into the source folder. Once again, if this wasn't just a demo, I probably would have an images folder inside of here. Then inside of my dog.js, we can import it. So import, and let's just call it, dog's not a great name. Let's go with pug from, and then what is the path? It's in the same folder, so ./pug.jpg. And now I can create an image down here, and I set the source to be pug, like that. Save, and it works. Now if I wanted to style this, instead of coming here and just saying all images, what I would do, the conventional way, is to give this image a class name and set the class name to be dog-image or dog-photo or something like that. And then come in here and say .dog/image, and let's just say I give it a set width of 200 pixels. Is that gonna, sure, good enough for now. So that's all I want to show you here. Importing assets, something that we'll do. And if you ever forget, you can just go look at your basic app.js that you get for free. You're importing an SVG and a CSS file. So what I do, anytime I make a new component, at the same time, I also make a new CSS file with the same name and then import it. So the top of every component I create has this, and then it has this or some form of this where I'm importing some CSS.